How could a simple, playful dance at a party turn my entire life upside down? What happens when a bet with friends leads to legal papers delivered to my door, and my husband calmly takes everything I thought was mine? I'm Zelma Viralai, and I thought I knew exactly how my life would play out. At 34, I had it all figured out: a decent job as a customer service supervisor, a stable marriage to Nathaniel, and our beautiful 7-year-old daughter Clara. But one night at the Loft Bar and Lounge changed everything, and now I'm sitting here wondering how a harmless bet could destroy my entire world. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The music pounded through the loft speakers as I sipped my third Cosmopolitan, feeling more alive than I had in months. Maya, Priya, and Tessa surrounded me at our high-top table, their laughter infectious as we watched the crowd of partygoers celebrating someone's promotion. "Look at you, Zelma," Maya said, her voice carrying that familiar teasing tone. "When's the last time you actually let loose? You've been so wrapped up in your boring domestic life." I bristled slightly at the word boring, but she wasn't entirely wrong. Nate and I had fallen into a routine that felt more like roommates than husband and wife. He came home from his teaching job, helped Clara with homework, and buried himself in grading papers, while I handled dinner and household tasks. Romance had become scheduled, predictable, almost clinical. "I let loose plenty," I protested, though even I could hear how unconvincing it sounded. Priya laughed, nearly spilling her drink. "Girl, when's the last time you danced with someone who wasn't your husband at your cousin's wedding? When's the last time you felt desired?" The question hit deeper than I wanted to admit. Nate had been distant lately, more focused on his students and his math curriculum than on me. Our conversations revolved around Clara's school events and household logistics. I couldn't remember the last time he'd looked at me the way he used to, with genuine desire and admiration. "See that guy over there?" Tessa pointed toward the bar, where a tall, dark-haired man in a fitted black shirt was ordering drinks. "Dylan something. He's been checking you out all night." I followed her gaze and felt a flutter in my stomach. The stranger, Dylan, was attractive in a way that Nate wasn't. Where my husband was reserved and scholarly, this man exuded confidence and charm. When he caught me looking, he smiled and raised his glass slightly. "He has not been checking me out," I said, but I could feel heat rising in my cheeks. "Oh, he absolutely has," Maya grinned wickedly. "I bet you wouldn't have the guts to go dance with him. The old Zelma would have, but married Zelma? She's too chicken." "I am not chicken," I shot back, my competitive nature flaring. "I could dance with him if I wanted to." "Prove it," Priya challenged. "One dance, just one. Show us you've still got it." The alcohol made everything seem brighter, more possible. The music was calling to me, and I could feel the stranger's eyes on me from across the room. When was the last time someone had looked at me like that? When was the last time I'd felt desirable, wanted, alive? "Fine," I heard myself saying. "One dance, but you're all buying the next round." My friends cheered as I stood up, smoothing down my black dress, the one Nate had barely noticed when I'd put it on earlier. I walked across the crowded floor, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and guilt. Dylan met me halfway, his smile warm and inviting. "I was hoping you'd come over," he said, his voice smooth over the music. "I'm Dylan." "Zelma," I replied, suddenly feeling like I was 25 again instead of a married mother of one. He extended his hand, and I took it, letting him lead me to the dance floor. The song was upbeat, energetic, and I found myself moving in ways I hadn't in years. Dylan was a good dancer, confident without being pushy, and he made me feel graceful and sexy. I could see my friends at our table, phones out, recording and cheering. The attention felt intoxicating. Other people were watching too, and I found myself playing up the moment, laughing and moving closer to Dylan than I probably should have. You're incredible, Dylan said, spinning me around. Your husband is a lucky man. The mention of Nate should have stopped me cold, should have reminded me of my wedding vows and the life waiting for me at home. Instead, I felt a pang of resentment. My husband hadn't called me incredible in months. He hadn't looked at me the way Dylan was looking at me, like I was the most fascinating person in the room. He doesn't dance, I said, which wasn't entirely true. Nate could dance. He just chose not to anymore. The song shifted to something slower, more intimate, and Dylan pulled me closer. I should have stepped back, should have thanked him and returned to my friends. Instead, I stayed, swaying against him, feeling desired and alive, in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I was so caught up in the moment, in the validation and attention, that I almost missed the figure standing near the edge of the crowd. Almost. But there, partially hidden behind a group of laughing partygoers, stood my husband. Nathaniel Rumer, still in his work clothes, his face a mask of shock and something else, something that looked like profound disappointment. Our eyes met across the dance floor, and time seemed to freeze. The music continued, Dylan continued moving, but all I could see was Nate's expression as he watched his wife in another man's arms. He didn't make a scene. He didn't storm over or shout. He simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd and leaving me standing there with the sudden, crushing realization of what I'd done. I woke up with a pounding headache and a stomach full of dread. The events of the previous night came flooding back in waves. The bet, the dance, Dylan's hands on my waist, and worst of all, Nate's face when he saw us together. The bed beside me was empty, sheets cold. I could hear sounds from the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling, cabinet doors opening and closing. Normal morning sounds that felt anything but normal. I pulled on my robe and padded downstairs, my mouth dry and my heart racing. Nate stood at the counter with his back to me, methodically buttering toast while Clara sat at the kitchen table, coloring in her workbook. "Morning, Mummy," Clara said without looking up from her drawing. "Daddy made pancakes, but they're cold now." "I can warm them up," Nate said quietly, still not turning around. His voice was carefully neutral, the tone he used when he was trying very hard to control his emotions. "Nate," I started, but he held up a hand. "Not in front of Clara." The warning was clear, and I swallowed my words. Instead, I poured myself coffee with shaking hands and sat across from my daughter, trying to act normal, while my world felt like it was tilting off its axis. "What did you draw, sweetheart?" I asked, forcing brightness into my voice. Clara held up her paper, a family picture with stick figures. Mom, Dad, and Clara, all holding hands under a rainbow. The innocence of it made my chest tight with guilt. "It's us at the park," she explained. "We should go today. It's supposed to be sunny." "That sounds nice," I managed, glancing at Nate. He was staring out the window, his jaw tight. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Girl, you were on fire last night. Hope Nate doesn't see the video." The video. My blood turned to ice. I quickly deleted the message, but not before Nate noticed my panicked expression. "Everything okay?" he asked, and there was something sharp in his voice. "Fine," I said too quickly. "Just work stuff." Clara finished her breakfast and asked to watch cartoons. As soon as she was settled in the living room, Nate turned to face me fully for the first time that morning. "We need to talk," he said. "Nate, I can explain." "Can you?" He crossed his arms, and I noticed he looked tired, like he hadn't slept. Because from where I was standing, it looked pretty clear. "It was just a dance," I said, the words tumbling out. "Maya and the girls dared me, and I thought it would be fun. It didn't mean anything. A dance." He repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "Is that what we're calling it?" "What else would we call it?" I felt my defenses rising. "I dance with someone at a party. People do that." "Married people don't usually dance like that with strangers," Nate said quietly. "And they definitely don't look at strangers the way you were looking at him." The accuracy of his observation stung. "You're being dramatic. It was harmless." "Harmless? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Zelma, do you have any idea how it felt to walk into that party looking for my wife and find her wrapped around another man? You weren't supposed to be there, I said, immediately regretting how defensive it sounded. I got off work early and thought I'd surprise you. Surprise me, right? He ran a hand through his hair. The question is, what would have happened if I hadn't shown up? How far would this harmless dance have gone? Nothing would have happened, I insisted. You're making this into something it wasn't. But even as I said it, I wasn't entirely sure it was true. Dylan had been charming, attentive, and I'd been caught up in the attention. If Nate hadn't appeared when he did, would I have stopped at just dancing? Your friends were recording it, Nate said. They thought it was hilarious. Maya actually waved at me when she saw me watching. The betrayal in his voice cut deep. Maya had seen him and hadn't warned me. Had they all thought this was some kind of joke? I'll talk to them, I said. I'll make sure they delete anything they recorded. It's too late for that. Nate moved to the counter and picked up his keys. I'm going to my mother's for a while. I need to think. Nate, please don't go. We can work this out. He paused at the kitchen doorway. Can we? Because right now, I don't even recognize the woman I married. The Zelma I fell in love with wouldn't have done this. She wouldn't have humiliated me in public and then tried to convince me it was no big deal. I didn't mean to humiliate you. But you did. His voice was quiet, matter of fact. You made our marriage look like a joke in front of strangers. You made me look like a fool. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my cold coffee. Clara wandered back in, looking confused. Where did Daddy go? To see Grandma Miriam, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Is he mad at you? Kids always knew. No matter how hard you tried to hide adult problems, children could sense the tension, the shift in the family dynamic. We just had a disagreement, sweetie. It'll be okay. But as I watched Nate's car disappear down our street, I wasn't sure that was true. The wedding ring he'd left on the counter caught the morning light, and I realized that my harmless bet might have cost me everything that mattered. Monday morning at the customer service call center felt different. I'd been working there for 6 years, and I knew the rhythm of office gossip. Usually, I was part of it, not the subject of it. But as I walked to my desk, conversation stopped mid-sentence, and I caught people glancing at their phones with knowing smirks. Morning, Zelma, my coworker Jennifer said, her tone overly sweet. How was your weekend? Fine, I replied curtly, settling into my chair and booting up my computer. Must have been quite the party Saturday night, she continued. I saw Maya's Instagram story. Very energetic dancing. My stomach dropped. Maya posted about the party? Oh, just a little video clip. Nothing major. Jennifer's smile was sharp. Though I have to say, you've got some moves. That guy certainly seemed to think so. I immediately pulled up Instagram on my phone, navigating to Maya's story. There it was, a 15-second clip of me dancing with Dylan, laughing as he spun me around. The caption read, "When your girl still's got it." The video had dozens of views and several comments from mutual friends. My heart sank as I realized how many people had seen it, how many people knew exactly what had happened at the party. I called Maya immediately. Hey, babe, she answered cheerfully. Rough morning? You look a little pale in your profile pic. Maya, you need to delete that video, right now. What? Why? It's cute. You look amazing. Because my husband saw me dancing with that guy and he's furious. This is making everything worse. There was a pause. Wait, Nate was there. I thought I saw someone who looked like him, but I figured it couldn't be. He never goes to parties. He came to surprise me, I said through gritted teeth. And instead he got to watch his wife making out with a stranger on the dance floor. You weren't making out, Maya said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. You were just dancing. It doesn't matter what it was. It looks bad, and now it's on social media for everyone to see. Okay, I'll delete it. But Zelma, maybe this is good. Maybe it'll wake Nate up. make him realize he needs to pay more attention to you. The casualness of her response infuriated me. This isn't some game, Maya. This is my marriage. And your marriage was boring you to death, she shot back. Don't blame me for reminding you that you're still a desirable woman. I hung up, frustrated and angry. Around me, the office hummed with the usual Monday morning energy, but I felt isolated, exposed. Every glance from a coworker felt loaded with judgment or amusement. My supervisor, Robert, appeared at my desk around 10 o'clock. Zelma, can I see you in my office? My palms were sweating as I followed him into the small, glass-walled room. Robert was generally fair, but he was also strict about maintaining professional standards. I'm going to be direct, he said, settling behind his desk. There's been some chatter this morning about a video of you from over the weekend. I haven't seen it personally, but I've had 2 different people mention it to me. It's nothing work-related, I said quickly. Just a personal social media post from a friend. I understand that, but when personal social media starts affecting workplace focus and becoming a topic of conversation during business hours, it becomes my concern. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. I'll make sure it's handled. Good. I'm not trying to police your personal life, Zelma, but you're a supervisor here. People look to you to set an example. Just be mindful of how your personal choices might reflect on your professional reputation. The conversation was brief but humiliating. As I walked back to my desk, I caught snippets of whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when people noticed me approaching. Saw her husband's face. Can you imagine? Always thought she was. I spent my lunch break in my car, calling Maya again. This time, she sounded less defensive. I deleted the story, she said. But Zelma, some people might have saved it or screenshot it before I took it down. What do you mean, some people? I mean, it had been up for like 18 hours. People share things. I can't control what happens after I post something. The reality of social media hit me like a cold wave. Once something was online, it took on a life of its own. Screenshots, shares, downloads. There was no way to completely erase digital footprints. That evening, I came home to find Nate's brother Matt sitting in our living room with Clara. She was showing him her latest art project while he helped her with homework. Where's Nate? I asked. Still at Mum's, Matt replied without looking up from Clara's math worksheet. He asked me to come by and help Clara with her homework. The implication stung. Nate was avoiding our house, avoiding me, but making sure our daughter's routine wasn't disrupted. After Clara went to bed, Matt and I sat in the kitchen with cups of coffee. Neither of us was drinking. He's really hurt, Zelma, Matt said finally. I know. I made a mistake, but he's blowing this out of proportion. Matt looked at me with something that might have been disappointment. Is he? Because from what I understand, you were pretty cozy with some stranger while your husband watched. It was just dancing, I said, but the word sounded hollow even to me. My wife would never dance with another man the way you danced with that guy, Matt said quietly. And if she did, I'd be questioning our entire marriage too. So you're taking his side? I'm taking the side of truth. Nate's not perfect, but he's been a good husband to you. He works hard, he's great with Clara, and he's been loyal. Can you say the same? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to defend myself, to explain about the loneliness, the feeling of being taken for granted, the way Nate had become distant and preoccupied. But looking at Matt's steady gaze, I realized how selfish those justifications sounded. I never meant for this to happen, I said finally, but it did happen, and now you have to decide what you're going to do about it. That night, alone in our bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out how a simple bet among friends had spiraled so completely out of control. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Dylan from the party. Got your number from Maya. Hope you're doing okay. Would love to see you again sometime. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. But the damage was already done. The fact that he'd contacted me, that Maya had given him my number, that he was interested in seeing me again, it all confirmed Nate's worst fears about what that dance had really meant. And deep down, if I was being honest with myself, I wasn't entirely sure Nate was wrong. The family meeting at Miriam Romer's house felt like a trial, and I was clearly the defendant. Nate's mother had always been polite to me, but there was a coolness in her demeanor that had grown more pronounced over the years. Now, sitting in her pristine living room, with its family photos and religious decorations, I felt like an intruder. Nate sat across from me, his posture rigid. Matt was there too, along with Nate's father, Harold, who'd driven up from Florida specifically for this conversation. The weight of their collective disappointment was suffocating. "I think we all know why we're here," Miriam began, her voice carefully controlled. "Nathaniel has told us about the incident at the party." "It wasn't an incident," I said, my defensive instincts kicking in. "It was a dance. One dance." Harold, normally the peacekeeper in the family, shook his head sadly. "Zelma, I've seen the video." My blood went cold. "What video?" "The one that's been making rounds on social media," Miriam said crisply. "Maya may have deleted her original post, but several people had already shared it. One of my friends from church sent it to me, asking if that was really my daughter-in-law." The humiliation was complete. Not only had I embarrassed my husband, but I'd embarrassed his entire family. I could picture Miriam's church friends watching the video, whispering about the Roma family and their son's inappropriate wife. "I'm sorry you had to see that," I said, trying to maintain some dignity. "But I think everyone is overreacting. I danced with someone at a party. That's all." "That's all?" Nate spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. "Zelma, you were grinding on a stranger while our friends recorded it for social media. You were flirting, touching, behaving like you were single." "I was having fun," I shot back. "Something I haven't done in months because you've been so distant and cold." "When's the last time you looked at me the way that man looked at me? When's the last time you made me feel desirable?" The room went quiet. I'd crossed a line, airing our marital problems in front of his family, but I was tired of being painted as the villain when Nate bore some responsibility for the state of our marriage. "So this is my fault?" Nate's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm saying that marriages require attention from both people," I said. "You've been so focused on work and Clara that you've forgotten you have a wife." "I work to support our family," Nate said. "I come home every night, I help with homework, I do household chores. What exactly have I been neglecting?" "Intimacy," I said, aware that his family was watching this exchange with growing discomfort. "Romance, making me feel like I matter to you as a woman, not just as Clara's mother or your household partner." Miriam cleared her throat. "Perhaps you two should discuss these personal matters privately." "No," I said, my frustration boiling over. "Everyone wants to judge me for one night, one moment of feeling alive and desired, but nobody wants to talk about why I felt that way in the first place." "Because you chose to feel that way," Matt said bluntly. "Nobody forced you to dance with that guy. Nobody made you flirt with him or press up against him. You made those choices." "I made the choice to have fun with my friends," I corrected. "I made the choice to feel good about myself for one night instead of sitting at home while my husband graded papers and ignored me." "I have never ignored you," Nate said, his composure finally cracking. "I may not be the most romantic person in the world, but I have been faithful, supportive, and present. I've never given you reason to doubt my commitment to our family." "Commitment isn't the same as passion," I said. Harold leaned forward in his chair. "Zelma, do you hear yourself? You're justifying betraying your husband because he's not passionate enough for you." "I didn't betray anyone," I insisted. "I danced with someone. That's not betrayal." "Then why did you delete the messages from your friends about it?" Nate asked quietly. "Why did you try to hide it if it was so innocent?" I stared at him, caught off guard. "How do you know about my messages?" "Because you left your phone on the kitchen counter this morning, and it kept buzzing. I saw Maya's text about hoping I didn't see the video. I saw Priya's message calling me boring and saying you deserved better. I saw Tessa's comment about how hot you looked with your new friend. The betrayal of my friends hit me almost as hard as the realization that Nate had seen their messages. They'd been talking about him, mocking him, treating our marriage like entertainment. "Those are my private messages," I said weakly. "Nothing's private when it involves disrespecting our marriage," Nate replied. "And that's what this is about, Zelma. It's not about one dance or one night. It's about a pattern of disrespect that I've been ignoring for too long." "What pattern?" "The way you talk about me to your friends, the way you dismiss my concerns, the way you prioritize their opinions over our relationship." He stood up, pacing to the window. "I've heard the comments, seen the eye rolls when I don't want to go out drinking or when I'd rather stay home with Clara than hit the bars. You've been building a case against me for months, and Saturday night was just the culmination." His words hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. I had been complaining about him to my friends, painting him as boring and inattentive. I had been prioritizing their validation over his feelings. "I want to save our marriage," I said, my voice smaller now. "I made a mistake, but I want to fix it." Miriam exchanged a look with Harold. "What does that look like to you, Zelma? How do you fix this?" "We go to counseling. We work on our communication. We both make changes." "And your friends?" Nate asked. "The ones who encouraged this behavior and then mocked me behind my back." I hesitated. Maya, Priya, and Tessa had been my closest friends for years. They were my support system, my escape from the mundane routines of marriage and motherhood. "They were just being supportive," I said. "Supportive of what? Your disrespect for your husband?" Matt shook his head. "Zelma, real friends don't encourage you to destroy your marriage for their entertainment." As I sat there, surrounded by Nate's family and their disappointed faces, I realized how alone I was. My friends had encouraged behavior that was damaging my marriage, and now I was defending them instead of acknowledging the harm they'd helped cause. "I need time to think," I said, standing up abruptly. "So do I," Nate replied. "I'll be staying here for a while longer." As I gathered my purse and headed for the door, Miriam called after me. "Zelma, I hope you understand that this isn't just about you and Nathaniel. Clara is watching all of this. She's seeing how her parents treat each other, and she's learning what marriage looks like. What kind of example do you want to set for her?" The question followed me all the way home, where I found my mother, Linda, waiting on the front porch with a casserole dish and a concerned expression. "Honey, I heard about the trouble with Nate," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Men can be so dramatic about these things. I'm sure he'll get over it once he calms down." But as I let my mother comfort me and make excuses for my behavior, I couldn't shake the feeling that this time, Nate might not get over it at all. 3 weeks had passed since the party, and my life had become a series of uncomfortable encounters and whispered conversations. Nate was still staying at his mother's house, coming by only to see Clara and handle practical matters. We spoke in polite, careful sentences that said nothing and everything at the same time. I'd been trying to reach out to Maya, Priya, and Tessa, but their responses had grown increasingly distant. Maya claimed to be busy with work projects, Priya had family obligations, and Tessa was dealing with her own relationship drama. The group chat that used to buzz with constant activity had gone silent. Then I received a text that made my blood run cold. "This is Dylan. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Cafe at 2 p.m. today. It's important." My hands shook as I read the message. Dylan hadn't contacted me since that first text I'd deleted. What could he possibly want to discuss now? I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a corner table where we'd have some privacy. Dylan walked in exactly at 2 o'clock, but he looked different from the confident, charming man I'd danced with. He seemed nervous, agitated. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "What's this about, Dylan?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I got a visit from a lawyer yesterday, your husband's lawyer." The world seemed to tilt. What? Apparently, there's been some kind of investigation into what happened at the party. The lawyer had photos, video footage from the bar's security cameras, witness statements. He asked me a lot of questions about our interaction. What kind of questions? Whether we'd met before, whether we'd planned to meet up, whether anything happened after the dance. Dylan leaned forward, his voice dropping. Zelma, I need to know, are you getting divorced? The question hung in the air between us. I hadn't even considered divorce as a real possibility. Nate was hurt and angry, but surely we could work through this. I don't know, I admitted. We're having problems, but I didn't think... Because this lawyer made it sound like your husband is building some kind of case. He had documentation of everything. Text messages, social media posts, even statements from people who were at the party. My mouth went dry. What did you tell him? The truth. That we'd never met before. That it was just dancing. That nothing else happened. Dylan paused. That is the truth, right? Because if there's something I don't know, something that happened that night after your husband left... Nothing happened, I said quickly. You know nothing happened. I know that, but your husband's lawyer seemed to think there might be more to the story. He kept asking about whether you'd given me your phone number, whether we'd made plans to meet again. I thought about the text Dylan had sent me, the one I'd deleted. Had Nate somehow seen it before I erased it? Did he have access to my phone records? Dylan, I need you to stay away from me, I said, panic rising in my chest. Don't call, don't text, don't try to contact me again. I wasn't planning to, he said, looking hurt. Look, you seem like a nice person, but I don't want to get involved in whatever's happening in your marriage. I just thought you should know that your husband is taking this very seriously. After Dylan left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, my coffee growing cold as I tried to process what I'd learned. Nate had hired a lawyer. He was building a case, documenting everything, preparing for... What? Divorce? Custody battle? I drove home in a daze and found Nate's car in the driveway. Through the window, I could see him helping Clara with her homework at the kitchen table. The scene looked so normal, so peaceful, that for a moment I could pretend everything was fine. But when I walked inside, the tension was immediate and palpable. We need to talk, I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Nate looked up from Clara's math worksheet. Clara, why don't you go play in your room for a while? We'll finish this later. Our daughter gathered her books, casting worried glances between us. She'd become increasingly quiet over the past few weeks, and I could see the stress of our marital problems affecting her behavior. Once Clara was upstairs, I confronted Nate directly. You hired a lawyer. He didn't deny it. Yes. And you had him investigate Dylan. You had him dig into what happened at the party. I had him gather facts, Nate said calmly. I wanted to understand exactly what I was dealing with. What you were dealing with? I'm your wife, not some kind of problem to be solved. Are you? The question was quiet but devastating, because the woman I married wouldn't have done what you did. She wouldn't have justified it the way you've justified it. She wouldn't have blamed me for her choices. I felt tears starting, but I pushed them back. So you're going to divorce me? Destroy our family over one mistake? I'm going to protect myself and my daughter from further humiliation, Nate said. Do you have any idea what the past 3 weeks have been like for me? Do you know what it's like to have people at work asking if I've seen the video of my wife dancing with another man? Do you know what it's like to have my own mother getting phone calls from her friends about my marriage? I'm sorry, I said, and for the first time, I truly meant it. I'm so sorry, Nate. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. And more importantly, you don't seem to understand why what you did was wrong. You keep calling it a mistake, but mistakes are accidents. What you did was a choice, a series of choices. Then let me make better choices, I pleaded. Let me fix this. Nate was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe I was getting through to him. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. "These are divorce papers," he said, placing the envelope on the kitchen table between us. "I'm filing for dissolution of marriage and requesting primary custody of Clara." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "You can't take Clara away from me. I'm her mother. And I'm her father. A father who hasn't embarrassed her at school, who hasn't made her the subject of playground gossip, who hasn't forced her to wonder why Mommy and Daddy don't live together anymore." "What are you talking about?" "Clara's teacher called me yesterday. Apparently, some of the other parents have seen the video, and their children have been asking Clara about it. She's been crying at school, Zelma. Our 7-year-old daughter is crying at school because of your choices." The guilt was overwhelming. I'd been so focused on defending myself, on justifying my actions, that I hadn't fully considered how this was affecting Clara. "We can fix this," I said desperately. "We can move, change schools, start over somewhere else." "I'm not running away from my life because of your mistakes," Nate said firmly. "I have a job I love, a community I'm part of, family nearby. I'm not uprooting everything because you decided to humiliate us publicly." I stared at the envelope on the table, unable to believe this was really happening. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to sign the papers. I want you to agree to joint legal custody with primary physical custody to me. I want you to be reasonable about this. And if I'm not reasonable—" Nate's expression was sad but determined. "Then we'll let the court decide. And I don't think you'll like that outcome, given the evidence I've collected." As he gathered his things to leave, I realized that my harmless bet, my moment of feeling desired and alive, had cost me everything I actually cared about. My marriage was over, my relationship with my daughter was in jeopardy, and I was about to become the subject of a very public, very messy divorce. The worst part was that I still wasn't entirely sure I understood how we'd gotten here, or how I could have prevented it. 6 months later, I sat in family court, watching my life be dissected by lawyers and judges. The woman who had felt so alive and desirable on that dance floor now felt small and defeated in the sterile courtroom environment. Nate's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Goldberg, methodically presented their case. The security footage from the loft showed me dancing intimately with Dylan, laughing and clearly enjoying the attention. The social media evidence included not just Maya's original video, but screenshots of comments and shares that had spread far beyond our immediate circle. But the most damaging evidence was the collection of text messages between me and my friends, messages where I'd complained about Nate, called him boring, and dismissed his concerns about our marriage. Messages where Maya, Priya, and Tessa had encouraged my behavior and mocked my husband behind his back. "Your Honor," Patricia said, addressing the judge, "this case isn't about one night or one dance. It's about a pattern of disrespect and poor judgment that has had lasting consequences for the family, particularly for the minor child involved." She presented statements from Clara's teacher about the disruption to our daughter's school experience, documentation of the social media spread of the video, and witness testimony from people who had been at the party. My lawyer, a court-appointed attorney who seemed overwhelmed by the case, did his best to portray my actions as a momentary lapse in judgment rather than a character flaw. But even I could see how weak our defense sounded. "Mrs. Virali made an error in judgment," he argued, "but that doesn't make her an unfit mother or justify removing primary custody from her." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, listened to both sides before asking me to speak directly to the court. "Mrs. Virali, I've reviewed all the evidence in this case. I've seen the video footage, read the text messages, and considered the impact on your daughter. Do you have anything you'd like to say?" I stood up on shaky legs, aware that this was my last chance to salvage something from the wreckage of my marriage. "Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake. I let my friends influence me into behavior that was inappropriate for a married woman. I hurt my husband, embarrassed my family, and cause problems for my daughter at school. My voice cracked, but I continued. I love Clara more than anything in the world, and I know I haven't shown that through my actions lately, but I'm still her mother, and I want the chance to be better. The judge nodded but didn't look particularly moved by my words. Mrs. Viralai, the court recognizes that you love your daughter. However, the evidence shows a pattern of behavior that prioritizes your social life and personal validation over your family's well-being. She reviewed her notes before continuing. The text messages between you and your friends show ongoing disrespect for your husband and dismissal of your marital responsibilities. The public nature of your behavior at the party and its subsequent spread on social media has created an embarrassing situation for your child at school. I felt the floor dropping out from under me. Therefore, the court grants the divorce and awards joint legal custody with primary physical custody to Mr. Roma. Mrs. Viralai will have supervised visitation every other weekend and one evening per week, with the possibility of expanded visitation pending successful completion of family counselling. The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. Just like that, my marriage was over, and my daughter would be living primarily with her father. As people filed out of the courtroom, I caught sight of my former friends, Maya, Priya, and Tessa, in the hallway. They'd been subpoenaed to testify about the events of that night and the text messages they'd sent. All three avoided eye contact with me, whispering among themselves as they hurried toward the exit. Maya, I called out, but she pretended not to hear me. I caught up with them at the elevator. So that's it? You're just going to pretend you don't know me? Maya finally turned around, her expression cold. Zelma, you've caused enough drama. We can't be associated with this kind of mess. This kind of mess? You encouraged me to dance with Dylan. You dared me to do it. We dared you to have fun, Priya said defensively. We didn't dare you to destroy your marriage. You recorded it and posted it online, I reminded them. You gave Dylan my phone number. That was your choice to make, Tessa said. Don't blame us for your decisions. The elevator arrived and they stepped inside without another word, leaving me standing in the courthouse hallway, completely alone. Later that evening, I sat in my empty house. Nate had moved out months ago, taking most of the furniture and all of Clara's things. The silence was deafening. My phone, which used to buzz constantly with messages from friends and social media notifications, was quiet. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, so confident that she deserved more attention, more excitement, more validation. That woman had been willing to risk everything for one night of feeling desired by a stranger. Now I understood the true cost of that night. I'd lost my husband, my daily relationship with my daughter, my friends, and my reputation in the community. The video that had made me feel so alive and desirable had become evidence of my poor judgment and disrespect for my family. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Nate standing on the porch, holding Clara's hand. Our daughter was carrying a small overnight bag. I thought Clara might want to spend some extra time with you tonight, Nate said quietly. The custody arrangement doesn't start officially until next week. I knelt down to hug Clara, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. I missed you so much, baby. I missed you too, Mummy, she said, but I could hear the confusion in her voice. She didn't understand why her parents couldn't live together anymore, why her family had fallen apart. As Nate prepared to leave, I caught his arm. Nate, I'm so sorry. For everything. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw not anger but sadness in his eyes. I know you are, Zelma, but sorry doesn't undo the damage. Is there any chance, in the future, that we could try again? I don't think so, he said gently. Trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild, and I need to focus on giving Clara stability now. After he left, Clara and I made dinner together and watched her favorite movie. As I tucked her into bed in her old room, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Mummy, why can't you and Daddy live together anymore? I struggled to find words that would make sense to a 7-year-old. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that hurt each other very badly. Daddy and I both love you so much, but we can't be married anymore. Was it because of the dancing? She asked quietly. My heart broke. Even Clara, at 7 years old, understood that my actions at the party had destroyed our family. Yes, sweetheart, Mummy made a very bad choice, and it hurt Daddy's feelings so much that he can't forgive me. Will you make better choices now? I'm going to try very hard to make better choices, I promised. As I sat in Clara's room, watching her sleep, I finally understood the full scope of what I'd lost. It wasn't just a marriage or a custody arrangement, it was the daily moments of family life, the security of belonging somewhere, the trust and respect of the people who mattered most. The stranger I'd danced with was long gone, probably having forgotten my name. The friends who had encouraged my behavior had abandoned me when things got difficult. But the husband who had loved me faithfully for 9 years, who had worked hard to provide for our family, who had been a devoted father to our daughter, he was gone too, and this time it was permanent. The bet I'd won that night at the loft had cost me everything worth having, and as I turned off Clara's light and headed to my own empty bedroom, I realized that some victories are actually the most devastating defeats of all.